From the moment early man first picked up a rock and saw something within greater than a simple stone, he has continually sought to craft better, more effective tools. Unbeknownst to him, the utility of the radio waves, which imperceptibly permeated every aspect of his being, wouldn't be discovered for another 2.5 million years. Now, modern man follows in the footsteps of the ancients, seeking new and improved means of communicating wirelessly over vast distances, unfathomable by his Stone Age relatives. The radio message application presents a balanced blend of communications effectiveness and efficiency within the compact Android ecosystem ubiquitous in our modern age.
This series presents information based in part on theory and conjecture. The producer's purpose is to suggest some possible communication solution, but not necessarily the only one, to the mysteries we will examine.
RadioMsg is a radio communications app developed by John Dewyer, whose call sign is VK2ETA, and is perfectly suited for radio communications among small teams. It's Android-based, so it's lightweight to pack and low cost to get started, and because it runs on Android, it's easy to use and simple to troubleshoot when something goes wrong. It comes packaged with a variety of FL Digimodes suitable for weak signals communications, including Olivia and Thor, and it has RTS support for compatibility with the Digirig Mobile, in addition to its compatibility with the Digirig Lite. You can set up RadioMsg for on-the-go use or as a persistently running home base station through which you can have keyboard-to-keyboard communications. You can relay messages off of other stations, and you can have asynchronous communication through a store and forward function. You can transmit photos, you can transmit your location, and you can pull location from other stations. You can even set up RadioMsg to be an email gateway through which you can have two-way email communications for very short email messages. RadioMsg is capable of quite a bit, especially when paired with its companion apps, but today we're just going to go over the download, setup, and transmission of your first messages. I want to show you how I download RadioMsg. Now we could go to github.com/vk2eta, scroll down to RadioMsg, and you can see here, this is where John keeps all of his software. We could click on RadioMsg, click down to the latest release, and then scroll down to the APK here and download it onto our phone that way. We could do that. I'm not going to, because if we do that, I'm not going to be notified about new updates when they are dropped. And I don't want to have to keep manually coming back to GitHub to find that. So there's a little bit better way. So we're going to start by downloading F-Droid. F-Droid is an app store similar to the Google Play Store, but it's for open source apps. And you just click here and sideload this app store onto your phone that way. And then we will use that to download another piece of software that will keep RadioMsg up to date. But while we're here, I want to show you something. If we click on this link to keepandroidopen.org, we can see that we have about 90 days until Google screws us, all of us, anyone who owns an Android that isn't currently running Graphene or Lineage OS. Because Google does not like stores like F-Droid. They do not like independent developers like John. They want to force independent developers like John to give them a ton of information and pay money so that their software can go through the Google Play Store. So they're going to clamp down on the ability to sideload apps. And if you do want to sideload apps, it's going to become this 9-step monster in the future, including a 24-hour waiting period. And I find that unacceptable. So if you are not going to get onto Graphene or Lineage, you should, but if you're not going to do that, you probably want to get RadioMsg onto your device now. So download F-Droid, open it up, and search for this app called Obtainium. I'll show you how to do that. You go to the magnifying glass here, and you go to the search, and you go Obtainium, and open Obtainium, not ObtainX, Obtainium. Okay, once we have that app, this is the app that's going to periodically search onto GitHub or whatever repository we're pulling apps from and look for updates. And you would change that interval by clicking settings and using the slider. So you could go down, to every 20 minutes, which would be ridiculous. Or I like to have it at about a day. That seems reasonable to me. Okay, so we will use this to download RadioMsg. You could also use it to download the new Android JS8Call application, and I think that's a really slick way of doing that. I'm going to show you how you can go about downloading RadioMsg though, but you already saw probably on my screen, I already have that on there, and so we'll just go through the motions here. I'm actually running a test version of RadioMsg that'll hopefully hit GitHub by the time this video is released. So you would search for the VK2 ETA RadioMsg version. It's very important we pick the right one. Click Pick. Some apps will require a pre-release. RadioMsg I don't believe is a pre-release, but if you do have any issues, try selecting pre-release and you would click Add. It's going to ask another question here. Do we want the Where Is It app? That's a companion app, and I haven't had great success running it yet, but you'd click there, click Continue, and it would then open up a screen where you could install. In this case, it would ask me to update. Okay. I'll show you real quick how you can download the JS8Call Android app while we're on this screen. So you do JS8Call, click Search, GitHub, select. It's going to do a little bit of searching around, and we need to make sure we're down here at the Android port of JS8Call Improved. Click that. And for the JS8Call Android app, you do have to select pre-release. It's just fine. There's no change to us. Click Add. And then down here at the bottom, we would click Install. And it would ask, do we really want to do that? Sometimes there's some warning screens. And then it will just be on our phone. And it will continuously, every day, search and keep that updated. All right. Let's go back to RadioMsg, though, and open that up. And we will start doing the setup of the actual app. When you are ready, go ahead and click your RadioMsg app, and it will start by asking you for some permissions. Now, we don't have to worry about the SMS permissions anymore. John has removed that from the main app, and I believe he's putting it in a companion app. That caused a lot of problems for people when they were getting set up because it's not really safe to have apps have permissions to read your SMS because they could see things like your two-factor authentication for your banking. So he's taken that out. We don't have to worry about that anymore, but it is going to ask for our location. We want to give it access to our location because we're going to be transmitting and pulling other people's locations. We want it to be able to record audio so that the sound card can work, and the phone calls, I believe that's also probably a sound card thing. And we want it to be able to access our files if we want to send photos. We want it to send notifications. Perfect. Okay, and we'll click Agree because I agree. And here we are. We're into the app, and we can click on the three-dot menu to start adjusting our settings. So let's first go to usage modes at the top. We'll just go top down. We don't have to worry about this so much unless we're in some sort of specialized cave rescue team, for example, and we're using a QDX to do through the earth communications. We'll just leave it on default, but we will need to select expert mode because if we don't, we won't be able to select a lot of the items here in the menu. So if you do have issues with that, go back to usage modes, make sure that expert mode is selected. Now for modes, we've got various labels for modes, and this is especially important for folks on your team who are a little less technically savvy than the average terminal element viewer. And so we can change these. We could put emojis. We could put a turtle next to crawl. I like to leave them just the way they are. I think that's a great set of labels, and I'll show you in a moment where that populates. And then for the actual modes, we can go through and we can select which modems we want. Now, you don't have to all be on the same page with everybody in your team because your app is going to be sending TX-IDs and receiving RS-IDs, but I have selected a few for my family that I think are really good. For slow, I do Thor 4. For steady, I do Olivia 8250. And you can obviously select whatever you want. Between Thor 4 and 8250, sometimes one works better than the other. I haven't quite figured it out, but Thor 4 does seem slower than 8250 Olivia. For fast, I go to Olivia 8500. I am starting to really appreciate Olivia. And then for sprint, I like 81000. At least 8 tones on Olivia seems to be just the sweet spot. And then for turbo, I go to 8 PSK 250, wherever that falls on this list. That is just a super fast mode. Not the most robust though, but I really like it for close-in work. Okay. And then that, I'll go back to the main screen. That populates up here in the upper left here, right? So if I click steady, I'll swipe back over to the modem screen to the right, and you can see up here in the upper left corner, it has now populated that. Okay, back to the settings. Now we have our modes. We can do quick messages, and this populates a series of quick tiles. So we could do left, turn, right, turn. Now, typically your lower cases are going to transmit faster, but I kind of like the look of having capitals. How about en route? How about arrived? And I don't really know I don't use these a whole lot. So how about hazard? Like if we're driving, we'll select there's a hazard and I'm safe. I don't know. Why not? Hold on. OCD taking over. Okay. So where that populates is in here. Swipe back. See, we've got 6 tiles for the quick tiles slide. We can add more, and I'll swipe over here. They would populate over here on this list. Okay. So I have it selected for send position with message. I like that. And we would long press, and it's going to act up because I don't have a sound card connected here, but it's going to get my GPS coordinates and then it'll send. I'm indoors right now, so it's not going to work very well. I'm going to click this little bubble here at the top right, and that'll cancel that message. Okay. And I'll swipe back to the message screen. We can continue on with our settings. Okay. So for our quick messages, we're done with that. User interface, however, we can select which swipeable screens we want to see. So we can turn some of these off. You can still get to them up here with the screens menu, even if you turn them off. But I'm going to leave them all on for now. But if you wanted to simplify things for people, you can turn off some of those swipeable screens. We can adjust our text size on those buttons. I like to keep both the inbox and the sent items displayed on that modem screen or on the menu screen. We can change the app theme to either small screen or dark theme, or just leave it at default. Default works fine for my devices, but check it out. Maybe one works better on your device. I don't do the single clicks. I like the long press for the quick messages. And we can adjust those buttons a bit. Send position with message default. I leave that on. I want to keep my screen on because when I'm using this, I really don't want to deal with my screen shutting off. And especially if you have a persistent station that you're leaving on at your home or whatever, you need to keep the screen on. I like to restore to and via. That is the call signs of the stations that we're using. And I like to have that restore whenever we start up the app. And the rest doesn't really seem to matter to me. I can adjust my alarm. So I get a notification alarm when a message comes in. I like to leave it at max. And if you were a little irritated by how loud that is, that's where you can turn it down a bit. All right. So that was the user interface. We can go to the modem now. Audio input source. I don't ever really need to change that from default, but maybe your device, your system, you've got to change that up a bit. I leave it at default so it selects my sound card. And this seems to help. And your audio frequency, this is your offset. Like remember on your FL Digi waterfall, you can select your cursor somewhere on the waterfall other than just that standard 1500. Leave it at 1500. Let's keep things simple for all the team members in your group. You know, if somebody has an oddball audio frequency, it might interfere with communication. We're just going to leave that as the default 1500 for now. You can have it transmit a tone, and there's another place where you can have a little hang up before you transmit here in the menu. I'll show you that in a minute, but if you want it to transmit a tone, I haven't really even heard it transmit a tone, but you could do 200 milliseconds, right? I don't bother with the tune button tone. And here, down here for the tone on or off at the left or right channels, leave it at the top if you're using a Digirig, either Digirig Mobile or Digirig Lite. Leave it as signal on left or right channels. If you have some other type of sound card, you may need to select one of the others, but I just use Digirigs exclusively, so we're going to leave that there. I don't need to turn on a slow CPU. I believe in the FL Digi literature, it originally said that's for computers with a processor speed less than like 700 megahertz. That's really slow, and I think most modern cell phone devices, even ones that are like 5 or 10 years old, are probably even a little faster than 700 megahertz processor speed. The save battery, I leave that off. I don't bother with that because it can affect the sensitivity of the receiver. For example, if you were all on the same modem and things were just a little too weak for the RSID to push through, but you've got a good weak signal, like weak signals mode that you've all agreed on, like that Thor 4, you can still communicate even if the RSID doesn't make it through potentially. So I like to leave that off. And this other one, since it may degrade modem sensitivity, don't want that. I'll leave that off. Now down here in the IDs menu, there is a passband. I don't like the search the passband because sometimes I will get errant Domino X RSIDs like 300 hertz off, and it just messes with stuff. So I don't need to search the passband. And then I leave this at 200, the default. Now errors, I always select very high because a lot of times I'm working with really weak signals here. Okay, now down to rig control. I'm using a Digirig Mobile, so I need RTS on. If you're using a Digirig Lite, you don't need RTS. It PTTs through a different mechanism. So I don't think it's going to hurt anything to have RTS on, but if you're using a Lite, you don't need that. Now also, if you're using a Google Pixel phone, Google Pixel does not like the Digirig Lite unless you are using a USB hub. So just be mindful of that. It is device dependent. You can encounter some issues. But so that's why I've chosen the Digirig Mobile. It works with the Pixel. It works with everything pretty well, just fine. You can PTT over CAT with certain types of transceivers. So he's got two of them entered in here, the QDX or the Yaesu FT8X9 or 818. I don't have one of those, so I'm going to leave that deselected. If your sound card uses DTR, select that there. And then here's the other place I was talking about where you can have an audio delay before and after a transmission. I've often just put 200 just in case. I don't really want it transmitting data before the PTT picks up, so I've been doing that. Now, personal data, this is where we're going to put our call signs in. So I'm going to delete that. And not only am I going to put in my call sign, I'm going to put in my name, just so that other people on my team can really easily pick that up. So my call sign's still in there. I'm still IDing appropriately. It's just that for people who don't have a catalog of call signs in their brains, this just makes it a little bit easier. So down here, I will put in the other stations. So for my home, I do my wife's call sign and my call sign, so that whoever's using the home station IDs appropriately, but that becomes the full call sign of our home station. And then I will also put her in. I'm going to select all of this, copy, and I will also put that in the list of relay stations, that same thing. Now, this is also where you would put some aliases for email. That's a little more complex than I want to dive into today, but when you are setting your station up to be an email gateway, you can put email addresses for people in there, and we'll dive into that in a future video, just not today. I'm already getting kind of exhausted with this. All right. So personal data is done, and that is where I'm going to swipe over so this populates. That's going to populate up here now. So if I want to send a message directly to home, that's where that's going to be. Directly to Kels, that's where that's going to be. If I want to send a message to Kels bounced off of home, that's how that will look. And then I'll adjust my speed here. Okay? And we don't have to worry about aliases and details for just the radio to radio communications. That's more for the email and SMS stuff. Okay. So, and then reset that. We'll go to settings and we'll continue on down through our journey through the settings menu. We've done personal data, GPS and tracking. We can run the GPS at regular intervals, and 60 seconds is the default. I like to leave that on. It will chew up your battery a little faster though. Just be aware of that. And then down at the bottom, we have some settings for the tracking mode that John has built into this app. Because remember, he is using this primarily when he goes on road trips with his friends in the Australian outback. And so they have this tracking mode where it essentially automatically drops waypoints and it alerts other people in his train. Is it the road train? Maybe not. It alerts other people in his road trip party when he gets to that point. So he can drop a hazard point and then they know like, oh, I need to slow down or whatever through the bowl dust hole. I can't remember all of the Australian lingo, but let's go down to relay. If I want to do relays, which I do, I got to select that. We can select a password for relays. I haven't done that yet, but if you wanted to really lock down your station and not let other people relay stuff, you can do that. And then this, I believe, relay messages over radio. We'll select that. The rest is for email. And he removed the SMS stuff from this menu, so that's good. So if you wanted to set up your email gateway, this is where you would enter your address and all of the IMAP information for how your phone app should interact with your email address. Again, we're not going to go through that today. We'll save that for a future video. Bluetooth, I don't touch anything on that. I think that's he's got some information in his &FL message startup guide for how to rig up a Bluetooth interface, and I have not done that. I'm just using Digirig, so we'll keep that blank. Message acknowledgement. Pay real close attention to this next one because we want to acknowledge using RSID. So when I receive a message, my phone, if I'm on the air, will let the sending station know that I have received that message by transmitting back an RSID. Okay? But we need to do a couple more things. We're going to mark the messages that we've acknowledged, and I don't have to worry about the forward right now, but acknowledgement position. I have to have an integer in here. So I'm going to put 1 here. Okay? You could go up to 8. There are multiple ways that he has this set up to acknowledge, including a series of beeps that he would listen to audibly in his road train thing. But we're not going to use that, but we do need to still put an integer in here. And your highest acknowledgement in the group, we'll just put 8. Why not? Okay, that can go up to a maximum of 8. And then I don't exactly know what the only acknowledge alert messages is, but I leave that unchecked because I want to acknowledge everything that I receive. And down to experimental. I haven't needed to do this restore settings at start selection, but I have on my persistent station, I needed to set this up to restart every 3 hours, so 180 minutes. That has been really important because this app, it will get bound up after a certain period of time and it'll crash. But if you set it to restart every 3 hours, it will clear that out and it will keep going. Real quickly before we move on here, I want to show you a couple tricks that have helped us maintain a stable, persistently running home station. So right now we have it just running off of this tablet. In the future, I might get a Google Pixel 8 or something that has HDMI output support so I can put it up on my nice screen up here that I usually would run the Raspberry Pi system on. But for now, this is what we're doing. And you can see I've got a USB-C hub that then splits off the ports because there's only one output for most tablets. And I'm running a wireless keyboard along with the Digirig sound card USB-A, and then I've got a power cable here, and I've set the tablet so that it'll charge up to 100%, then it will stop charging until it drops down to about 95%, because I really didn't want to bubble the battery. I've done that before on a device, and I don't want to do that again. We're also going to need to go into the settings for the app here. So I'll go to the icon, right click on it, and click the I button in the upper right corner. It might look a little bit different on your system, but the point is we want to get into the app info and click battery. And I want it to have unrestricted battery use in the background at all times. I do not want this computer growing a brain and thinking it's smarter than me and trying to optimize this app off when I'm not using it. I want it to just run all of the time. Additionally, in the display settings, I want to make sure that I have no screensaver running. I thought that a screensaver would be a good idea at first. In fact, I tried to turn the screen timeout off, but it won't let me. But your screensaver, a lot of people don't know Android has a screensaver. Turn it off. It will prevent your persistently running station from restarting at those prescribed intervals. And then just remember, in your settings, under user interface, we need to scroll down and make sure that we have keep screen on selected. Now, those of you who are technically savvy and want a project that can control Internet of Things devices over radio or even interface Mesh-tastic with RadioMsg can download John's Java PSK mail server application on his GitHub. This was recently renamed to Java RadioMsg, which is in contrast to the Bedrock version of RadioMsg, which Now, the actual physical setup of this is fairly straightforward, especially if you're on VHF or UHF. Here, as an example of a transceiver suitable for use as a VHF base or mobile station, I've got a Yaesu FT2900, and I really like this line of radios. The 2900, the 2980, you can still find them used. You don't have to go to the brand new one. I love this massive heatsink on them, and I run it at about 30 watts. I think that's the medium power setting. And I've got the proper Digirig cable for this transceiver. I am not homebrewing any of these cables. I just want them to work when I need them. But pay close attention when you're setting this up because it's easy to get this mixed up. On the side that's shaped like a Y, both of these plugs go to the transceiver, but here's why it's easy to mix this up. One of them is a 3.5 millimeter plug, but also on the stretchy long end that goes to the sound card is a 3.5 millimeter plug. So I'm going to plug that into my Digirig Lite here. And I could go straight to my device with the USB-C plug on the Digirig Lite, or I could use the USB-A and go to a USB hub. And I could put power to this. I can plug in a wireless keyboard adapter, but cast that aside. And the RJ12 plug goes into where the microphone would go. And in the back, we have that 3.5 millimeter port. We'll plug that in. Now, it's possible that these could rattle loose under vibration. I've never had that happen, but I think it's best practice that wherever you have this set up, you just kind of leave it still and don't jostle it around. Now, the sound settings are a whole lot more critical on HF. That's going to be a matter of trial and error and checking meters. It's not quite so critical with Olivia and Thor. It's not the same as JS8Call where you really need to dial in those sound settings. But on the VHF transceiver or UHF, what is important is that you need to make sure that squelch is all the way off. So I'm going to turn that all the way down. And with volume, again, not so critical, but it doesn't need to be very high. So I usually look for the low end stop and the high end stop, and then I just kind of estimate somewhere around 20 or 25%. Doesn't really matter. And that's good to go. Now, for portable use, I have these bags set up with some essential electronics in them, including our ICOM transceiver. Now, I've had multiple people who watch this channel now come up to me and say, Drew, why do you hate Baofengs? What's your beef with Baofengs? I don't remember ever saying that I hated Baofengs. I started on a Baofeng and got lots of practice, cut my teeth on a Baofeng. It's just I've got an ICOM now. I think with whatever transceiver you're using, especially with a Baofeng, you should try to start off with like medium power because, especially with a Baofeng, heat dissipation is a little bit more of a concern. But whatever transceiver you're using, nearly all of them will work. You need to make sure that that squelch is off. So however you accomplish that with your transceiver, be familiar with your manual of arms there. Turn that squelch off. You can always turn it back up when you want to use it for voice later. We're using the Digirig Mobile for our portable use because we're going to Pixel phones with Graphene OS. And Pixels do not like the Digirig Lite for whatever reason. It's kind of sad, but Digirig Mobile works just as fine. And we've got the older, blockier ones. The newer ones are about half that thickness, so if you buy a new one, you'll be a little bit more set up for portable use. The proper Digirig cable here, again, not homebrewing this, plugs in. And the black 3.5 millimeter plug goes into the black audio port. Easy enough. USB-C into that. And when you first plug this into your device, it's going to ask you, hey, which app do you want to open up when you plug this in? So select RadioMsg, and then every time subsequently when you plug this in, RadioMsg will pop right up, and you're off to the races. All right, now we're to the exciting part here. I drove out into the woods so that I can demonstrate how to send messages with RadioMsg. So there's a couple ways we can accomplish this. First, I've got my mobile in the glove box, and I've got this long Digirig cable snaked to it with the Ferrites on it. And I could just clip right into my device and plug this onto my mag mount here. And that works just fine. That's very similar to how John describes using this app with his friends on his road trips through the Australian outback. But one other way I often will use this, especially if I'm at work on a long boring fire standby, I will bring a Diamond RH205 antenna in my pack, which is, I believe, a 5/8 wave antenna on 2 meters. And it has an advertised gain of like 9 decibels. I don't think it gets louder than that unless you're using a Yagi. This is an outstanding antenna. This is the one we did almost 100-mile voice contact with on our Soda to, I believe, Scotchman Peak. Anyway, so I'm going to turn my portable on here, and clip in. I've made sure my squelch is off. Now the Diamond RH205 has a spring here on the top, and so it can bend out. And I think we're getting a little bit of a ground plane effect from the roof of the car, but I'm not sure. It works really well. I did like a 55-mile contact the other day. And so, okay, I'm going to clip in. Radio message should pop up. And I realized I forgot to show you something when we were doing the settings. So if we go up here to settings and then to the modem, there's this radio audio to speaker. So click on at 0 decibels. And what that does is allows us to check real quick to make sure that nobody else is using the frequency. So I will click the speaker icon up here, and we got static. Okay, if I click again, it's an automatic, so it will just kind of open up the speaker if it thinks it hears a modulated signal, but I usually run that off unless I'm just checking to make sure that nobody else is using it. Additionally, swipe over here to the modem screen and punch that squelch down button a bunch. We just want no squelch. No squelch at all. We want to pull the weakest signals that we can out of the weeds. Okay, we're ready to send our first message. So we could start by punching the clover button at the top. That's the expert mode. And it brings up some more buttons. And so I'm going to start by selecting home and turbo. And remember, I end up doing a lot of swiping over to the modem screen. 8PSK250 is what we're on for turbo. And I'm going to click inquire. That's going to be that SNR request. Now, it's not exactly a signal to noise ratio like we typically think of it with other apps that we use. It's not going to return a decibel rating. The way John described it to me, this percentage that it sends back is how much of the message went through without needing any sort of forward error correction. So if it did require some forward error correction, it'll be less than 100%. So let's just see if turbo is actually working. And it did. And we should get an audible tone. So that's how it notifies you. That's our ringtone, essentially. You can't change it, but that's actually a pretty decent one. It definitely catches the ear, and it sent back a 99%. That's plenty for using 8PSK250. So let's now do some actual messaging. We can say, hello, and I'm going to hide these extra buttons here. Most of those you don't need because they are designed for interacting with his Java radio message application that you run on Linux on a home station. And so I'm going to click send text. This is only going to send text, not position. And it's going to be very quick. So sometimes I'll swipe over here just to see that everything's going good. And I can click waterfall on if I want to see what's going on here. Okay, waterfall's looking good. And it just sent back that RSID. You could see that on the waterfall. I'm going to swipe back. Now let's say I want to send my position. Say here I am. Okay, I will click send position. That's going to delay a couple seconds while it pulls the GPS coordinates, and then it'll fire off that message, whatever I wrote, along with those GPS coordinates. So this phone that I'm using right now does not have any internet. It's an old phone. It does not have any connectivity at all. And so it's just using the internal GPS in this, and it worked. It'll say 2 seconds late. That means it took 2 seconds in order to gather those GPS coordinates, and then it fired it off. Okay, one thing you can do when you do perhaps use the request position button here, or you have somebody else send you their position, we can click on this message and we have a variety of buttons here. So I'm going to click map view, and Organic Maps is the app that I use for this because it's very clean, very small app, and you can download maps, pretty decent maps for wherever you're at. So that's where it's putting me, and it just so happens to recognize that I'm there too. So not only can you do that with messages that you've received, but you can do it with messages you've sent. So let's say I don't want to type all that. I want to just use these quick keys. Okay, well, I've already set it to default to send position with message. So it's going to send and tell the person I'm talking to where I'm at. And I'm going to click I'm safe. I'll long press. And then at some point, yep, there we go. It'll get the GPS fix. Probably takes a couple seconds, and then it'll fire that off. And if all goes as planned, I can look at the modem screen, the message will pop up, and we'll get a received indicator in just a sec. There it is. All right, let's do something else fun. How about we send a photo? So I swipe over to the photo transmission screen, and I'm still got home here selected. That's who I want to send it to. And under here, we're going to keep that as direct. I don't need the alias and details, and I don't necessarily care about sending the position right now. I've got turbo here. So we'll click new picture, and then we'll grab just whatever's at the top. That's Reaper, our station bird. And so it's already telling us it recommends MFSK32 at 2x speed, and that is a estimated 1 minute 51 second transmission time. I don't really want to spend that much time here, so how about we click low resolution? That brought it down to 51 seconds, but you know what? I don't even have that much of an attention span, so I'm going to click color. I could click speed, and we could go up even faster, but just remember, whenever you're making stuff faster, the robustness of your signal gets less. So I think 19 seconds is just fine, and I'm going to click send. So what it's doing right now, it's sending an RSID saying we are sending this preamble in 8PSK250. Once that's done, it will send another RSID, and we could even perhaps go over to the modem screen and see what's going on here. It will send another RSID, and that will flip it over to that MFSK32 photo transmission mode, and it'll send the rest of the picture now. Now, sometimes I will get a message acknowledgement flag on whatever I send with photos. Sometimes I don't. I don't know if it's entirely consistent, but I do know that I'm close enough in that the message should go through. It's just, for whatever reason, it doesn't always flag it as received. So if you're keyboard to keyboard talking with somebody, you might say, hey, I'm going to send a photo, and then ask them later if they actually received it. You might need to slow things down a bit or pick MFSK 16 instead of 32. So that's all fine and dandy. We've done direct keyboard to keyboard communication with home, but let's say I need to relay a message off of home to my wife, who might be a further distance away, but I can't reach her directly. So here's how we do this. We're going to encode it a little bit differently. So I'm going to make sure it goes to her, okay? But instead of direct, we're going to click via home. And I want to send her a message. Hello, I'm safe. Okay. And I can just click send text for this purpose. And what's going on here, it's sending the message to my home from me to Kels, message, hello, I'm safe, via home. Don't worry about it. It says SMS. Don't worry about that. Does not mean SMS text message. We're just sending messages over radio. So it's received the message, and it's flagged it over here, received. Okay. What we're going to see in a moment is home pick that up and relay that on to the next leg. You can only do one hop with radio message, but often that's plenty. Anytime you're doing more than one hop, things really start breaking down quickly. Okay, so it sent the message. I did not have that pop up on my message screen because it's a duplicate message for me. The program appropriately recognized that it was a message that I already sent, and I don't need that popping up again. Now, Kels isn't on the air right now, and that's fine because it just so happens we encoded this in the precise manner so that it will store this message on the home system for her to pick up later. This is how we get our asynchronous communication. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to simulate how she would pick up a message. I've got another message sitting there waiting, and I'm going to pick that up. So I'll just click to all. It really doesn't matter exactly what you have up here in the direct, but I want it in via. I always need that home. This is how we do all of our message handling. We pick it up with the station that we're talking to that we want to pick up messages from in via. And so this button down here in the lower right corner, it says message for me. If you short press that, it's going to resend whatever it sent last. So I could click on that, and if I got an error or something with the last one, it'll resend that. But what I want to do here is I want to long press, and it brings up this menu. And so up here, I want to pick up all my messages since the last time I requested messages, and down here, last X messages, any type, and I'll just click request. One thing I forgot to mention, I'm transmitting in turbo. Now, regardless of whatever the home station that I'm talking to, or the target station I'm talking to, whatever it's set at, doesn't matter because it's always going to bounce back the exact mode that I encoded with it. Okay, it received my message request, and in a moment, we will see a message come through. And so that's really good. So regardless of whatever they are set at, let's say I'm in a really poor situation and I need to pull, oh man, no messages. Okay, I'm not exactly sure what I did wrong there, but if something screws up like that, I can go here and I can say, how about you give me the last message stored since last request? Okay, we'll try that again. So it's not an entirely perfect program, but it is the best option we got for Android communications with store and forward. And let's see what's going on here. It thinks a message is coming in. Oh, look at that. How interesting. I'm going to go ahead and cancel my message with this bubble up here at the top that says an X. I think Kels is photobombing us here. Let's see what she writes. It's coming through real slow. We'll check out the waterfall. She writes, copy. I really appreciate RadioMsg for how simple it is for my family to use. Because there it is. Copy. All good here. Cool. She did not send a location with that, and that's just fine. We don't need that. I'm pretty confident I know where she's at right now. And we click return. Okay, so let's go back to retrieving our messages. And we'll go, how about the last one message? And send, yeah, any type, request. Fire that off. So RadioMsg has been so simple for my wife to pick up, and my kids, they can use it with, obviously, with parents over the shoulder until they have a license themselves. But guys, we really need to be thinking about that, because our wives have lots and lots of work to do. They do not have time to be troubleshooting all sorts of like sound card issues and stuff. We need to just make things as simple as possible if we want wives to play with us. Oh, it's giving me the duplicate message. So we'll go to the last two messages. See if I can pick up that message that I stored. Sorry about this, folks. Showbiz. But think about on your team, even if it's not your family, on your team, you are bound to be probably the only guy who has any interest in communications on your team. So you need to make things easy. If you want your friends to play with you, if you want a good team to be able to communicate with each other, you need to make things as easy as possible on the people you're working with. So it's probably going to send, there it is. There's the message that I had stored. Not sure what went wrong there, but you always have that option to request the last 5 messages or whatever. You're pretty sure a message is pending. All right. That is pretty much all I have to show you here. We've gone through photo transmission. We've got our quick messages here. And how about I just end it by, let's see, we'll go here and I believe we can reply. Thanks. Headed home. And I'll click reply. That's just yet another way that we can send messages. I have to click return. And that's it, folks. You've got enough information to be dangerous now. Thank you all for hanging out with me today. Don't forget to spam that like and subscribe button, but make sure to hit them an even number of times so that it unlikes and unsubscribes. All right, let her rip.
This series presents information based in part on theory and conjecture. The producer's purpose is to suggest some possible explanation, but not necessarily the only one, to the mysteries we will examine.